This is a metaphor that's running between Olam Atzilus and Olam Habriah. And we're kind of like dropped into this. We're on page Reshit Alf. That's where I got it anyway. It says Kofes Asvan Steeman. There are 22 closed up letters. Agide Estrim Mishtayim Osius Hastumos Shel Chachma Atzilus. Okay, so we're in a very high place. And from this is the position from which all of Olam Atzilus developed. Kaf-base Aspen is Gallion. Then there's another case of 22 letters that are revealed. V'kach gam be'esrim b'shnayim oser shenizgala b'chal b'shal olam habriah. So there was a compare these two. He's comparing these two. Okay. Something goes wrong with his phone now. Okay, back. So I was just reading Kape Aspen Steaming. So there's 22 letters that are closed up. They refer to the Chochmah V'Tzilus. Na'atzil Kala Matzilus all comes out of there. Kafe Aspen is Gallion. Then there's 22 letters that are more physical, more revealed. V'kach Gaim Be'esrim B'Shtayim Osio Shenizgala B'Chochmah Shel Olam Habriah. They are revealed in Olam Habriah, but they're more revealed. But so Malchus D'Atzilus. Now his whole thing he drops in here. This is a secret of the Malchus of the Atzilus. You read is the Bria. It goes down into Bria. So he says that's actually the secret. It's tied some way to the Chochmah of Olam Habriah. So he said, so what we call the Olamos Hanifradim, Shehem Bri Yitzi and Nesiya. The Rav Amma Odney says furthermore, Yud Sasim Yud Galia. So now let's talk about the Yuds. Yuds usually refers to Chochmah. So Rabbi Oz Yud Shal Chochmah Datzilus, let's take that one. He's stumid, but it's closed up. The Nechlalas B'Socha V'Kola Eses Spheres Datzilus Ha'oilan Demis B'Yud. So it's part. I don't know how he counts exactly, but because we go from Chochmah downwards, I guess you count das. Okay, going on. He said, "V'nichlala b'socha b'kol eses spheres tzilus." This include that yud on the top, all the 10 spheres of tzilus, olam and misper yud, and that's how you get the count of yud. The kach, and then he says like this also. Gam os yud shel chochma debriya. Now we have also a duplicate of it in olam abriya, the olam aparu. V'socha nichlalos in that kol eses spheres olam the misper yud. Now, so he compared these two, right? So then he says like this: Salsim v'galia v'maska look at the top sin askol. So look at the mishkal. So askala is the balance, is the middle line. So the mishkal shava the mishkal look olam achatzilus shouldn't answer ba'os yud. So he says there's a balance here. In other words, I don't know, an equivalence in some way of the Olam Atzilus, that Yud that we're talking about, Shena'atzel Ba'os Yud, that all of it poured out of this letter Yud, but that's the Yud Stuma Ba'olam Abriya, then comparing it to Olam Abriya, Sheniver Ba'os Yud Giluya, but there is a much more physical Yud. Well, he calls it Giluya, a revealed Yud. So here's a sense of chosim in the sense of a stamp, like it's a seal of it. That's what I think anyway. So it's also stamped or sealed dugmas of a bria. So in other words, the bria has a recipient type of a relationship with its seals. So you could do something else. Here's another. The metaphor goes along. That yud is actually yud and vav dalet. So min os yud shal bria shehi chachma de bria canal yotzish shtei os is vav dalet. So now we're in bria though. We're looking at the yud of bria, and yud of bria also has these two other letters which are contained in the yud by itself. Now originally I'm thinking that maybe he said that from the Yud of Atzilus, he says everything else flows out of that. And the same thing is true of the Yud of Bria. Is that there now we look at the Bria where you could see it more closely, more clearly, and there's a Vav Dawud attached to the Yud. Shehem Milui Os Yud. So then that we have the Yud and it's Milui. Haim Sod Zachav and the Cave of the Bria. So this idea is the secret of the Zachav and of a Bria, Moshe and the Zachav and the Cave of Baruch. So they're both created together. And so this is the part within the Yud of Bria, so it's Lashon Bara, is Lashon Bria, and Bara Osa Bria Osam, so there they are, V'chein the Equine Matat V'Sandal. Now, what's Pshat here? So because he says that one of the Matat refers to the Vav, and Sandal refers to the Dalet. So because we know in other places that Matat really is the Malach, the overall Malach of Olam Yitzira. So we're seeing here the development not just of that. He's not. I don't think he's going to go there, but he says of that, but also the other two worlds. Shehem so zer benok. So he said So he says that the again because I keep thinking that the top refers to Olam Yitzira, and he says that this at this point Shehem so zer benok shel Olam Abriah. And before Shahagam, that whereas Shamarnu La'el that we said previously, Sha'os Yud Dachar Va'os Hey Nuk. So we said that they're male and female, right? Va'os Hey is the Nekeva. High Aser, but in this place, what place? The place of Bria, Vav Dachar and the Dalet is the Nukva. So we have normally we're saying Yud K, Vav K, and then the K, right? But here always says it's the Vav and the Dalet. In this place, the Os Vav who's Os Daled is the Nukva. So you went into a little different space here. It's all part of this original Yud. Inyan who the El because up above we're talking about the Kolel, when we're talking about all of the Tzilas together, but here now we're not talking about the Yud and the K, because that's talking about Olam Atzilus. Here we're talking about Olam Abriah. Sheyesh becomes Zachar in the Keva. There also have a Zachar in the Keva, which is visible, which is his Vav Dal. So he's like a Bavara Oath. So he's explaining more. Begin Da. Then you have this concept again, which we have seen previously, is Du Trin, which means two. So two, the Mishum Chochin, Hapirushach of the Milas Du, who Shnaim is two. Big pair is doubles. Adam, V'chava, Nivra, Du Partsufim. So that's the language of the Elazis that use the Latin word there. I believe, I know it's a Latin word, but which means two. V'chava, Nivra, Du Partsufim. Kolomar, Shnei Partsufim, Du, Dacher V'nok. This is what it means. Now, in this case, the Dalet comes before the way he's writing it in Du. He's said this a few times. The Dalet comes before the Vav. So here he says Dacha V'nok. Ki Osias do, they actually switch them around. Romezes al Zer V'nok, Debriya. So Milui Os Yud Vav Dalet Canal. So we have now the concept of comparing it that in Olam Atzilus you have a Yud and you have a K. Over here you have a Yud and then you have a Vav Dalet. And then he says, which represents Dacha V'nok. Whoa, something happened here. The lights went out in the room, then they went back on. Okay. Uh, Let me see. Osias do romances al zer v'nuk de bria. They're a reference to the zon v'nuk of a bria. That's the vav and the dalet. So milui os yud vav dalet canal. Va'amnam yesh chilik bein osias vav dalet shall milui yud vav dalet. There's a difference between those vav dalet. I mean, if you look, I started reviewing Otzos Chaim, and you see over there they got a whole deal about the hay, and then the hay splits into a vav dalet. This is a different place. That's in the Ak. Here we are, using the same metaphor in some ways, talking about Olam Abriah. Shall Milu Yud Vav Daled, the Osius do, which makes those two letters, shall do Partsufim, which is a remiss to the fact that there's two Partsufim. Now, which two Partsufim he's talking about? He says because normally what you see, they're closed up inside of Abba. And when they're dead, they're hidden in the middle of the Yud. but do partsufim, but they're not still called by the two partsufim. You can't see this. You only see a yud. Elachei bechinas base tipo shal abba. Now he says, but what are they? They are the concept of the two tipos of Abba. Now let's just stop and think. Abba. So he says Abba is a yud, it's a da. So inside of the yud, he says there's also two drops inside of the. Well, the yud looks like a drop itself. So in base tipo shal Abba. Now he says that's all it is. It's just that Abba has planted two seeds. So you're going to say so two seeds is above in the Dalit. But then after that, but then they go to gestation period inside of Bima. Then you see that there's these two letters. There shall do partsufim. Originally he says there were two drops. Now they're not drops anymore. Now they look like a dollar and above, which comes to the concept of the double parts of two partsufim. The because now once it gets into their womb of their mother, now we don't know which mother. I don't know which mother he's talking about, but he has to be talking about Olam Habriah. They're still like a pair, twins. The Lakach Siamese twins, I guess. The Lakach B'Shaz later, but what happens is when they get born, they're born, do Partsufim Devugim Yachad, then they have two Partsufim, which are like Siamese twins stuck together. And yesterday he said that they're stuck together on the middle line. So I don't know exactly where that was going. So he said, so now you say the do is really a part of the letter hey. And so as a result of that, now you see that was a reference to where they came from, which is the womb of Ima. Now we see that it's two parts, but Omer Od, it says more that these two letters do trin kafling. So now let's move on to the next stage. He says, let's go to the place where Zohar and Nog are uncoupled. So the Bria. Let me go back. I was looking at the side for a second. He says so now we're talking about the action in Oivi, where it's what's taking place, and in Silus is taking place in the Bria, but he says it's in the form of a stamp. In other words, it's more physical. It's actually the impression itself. And then they get split into two. Then they become the concept of two columns. What are the names of the columns? The columns, one is called Matat. So he's saying the Matat is really, of course, it makes sense, who represents, I'm speaking for myself, it represents Olam Yitzira. He says this is born out in Olam Habriah. Basando, that which is the Vav and the Dalet, which is the extension of the Yud. Asher Alechem Nachon, the Nishan Tavis Habayis Elyon, that everything, the upper bias rests on this, Shuhu Malchus Tzilus, which is the Malchus of Tzilus. Okay, we're going to continue to move along. Okay, here we go. Another Reish Tes Vav. He says, so we're in the middle of this concept. So we say here where you see these letters. Besod Parsufi Zer Benot the Bria. Kalos Olam Habriah who besod Oz Hey. But if you look at Bria itself, it represents Bina. So Bria in the panoply of the Parsufim, rather the Olamos goes along with the Parsuf of Bina. So let's just take the Yud as by itself. Sha'os Yud Atzmo. Below Milui, who sowed he sowed Chochma the Bria, Shuhu B'Bechid. So this is the concept of the Chochma Bria. This Chochma Bria, the Chochma is on the right side, it's the male side. The Shuhu B'Bechid is Yisod Shal Malchus Tzilus. Now this is the part that is a little bit hard for me to see how it goes. This is because the Chochma is on the right line, and the Yisod is at the bottom of the middle line. But he says over here that the Yisod of Atzilus Yisod shall, excuse me, I said it wrong. The Fishu Bechinas Yisod of the Malchus of Etzilus. You go all the way down to the Malchus of Etzilus. You look down at the bottom. I lost him again. Okay, so you look down to the bottom of Etzilus and you find Malchus, and you look down at the bottom of Malchus and you see there's a Yisod there. So in that Yisod, he says it translates to the Chachma Bina. So like I said, Chachma Bria rather. So he said, "Shal Malchus Etzilus, you're the mountain of Olam Bria goes down into Olam Bria, Mashpir Sham Bebechinas Zachor, and it pours out there. So now we know that the Yisod of Malchus is a pourer. So now the Malchus itself, some aspects of it, or what I'm not sure exactly where we ended up, it goes down into Bria. So now what part is flowing into the to the Yud of Bria, that is the Yud by itself, is going to be the Shefa that's coming from the Yisod of the Malchus of Etzilus. So he say, hey, so then he says, now that's the Yud. The Hey itself represents Nukva. Both hey messes the Cholos Olam Abriya. So he's talking about the general idea of Olam Abriya, Shina Asiva, but it is Nukva, which now is considered to be a Chitzonius, which is the female aspect of the female aspect. The Kabul as the Shefa of the Malchus Atzilus, which comes to it through the Shefa of the Malchus of Atzilus. So that's the concept. The Bria is a Hey in relationship to Atzilus. The heat sowed os hey achrona shel Leviah. Now that right there is the hey achrona of Leviah. On the Leviah, that explains more because it came all the way down into the lowest extremities, let's say so to speak, of Olam Atzilus. And so now we see that it's a hay. So the Leviah excuse me, let's see what it is. It comes out into Bria as a hay. And Leviah Shazer Venuk the Bria, so the male and female aspects of Bria, Shehem Osius do, Kamosha Amarna La'el. As we know, you could combine them into a hay. So at the feet, what? 1 second. Wait a minute. I have equipment and I can't. I keep messing it up. Okay, going back. Right? Where was I? Lar od shazer v'nuk debria shehim ozias du kamosh amar la'el. Hinehem atman asa yachad v'tzuras os hey achas. So they combine into a hey. Vishin asa b'pechet nuk for the os yud because now they're becoming a receptacle for the letter yud shel chachma debria, which is the chachma debria. So I need to read this again. He said from Umavar. Oh, Shazer v'nuk debria. They are the letters do. Kamosha Marmala El. We've been talking about this. But by themselves they make one hey. Hey Acha. The Fishin Asa is Nukta Laos Yud Shel Chachma the Bria, because that the Bob and the Dalit are now the female aspect. They're the recipients of the Shefa of the Yud from Chachma, which he said came from the Yisod of the Malchus of Etzilus. Don't wonder about this. Do how you may put the two letters together, the os hey make them into one hey. So what's the conversation? Shahare kach matzina be'os hey rishayim shel shem Habriah, because we know that in the first the hey in the shem of Habriah, which is I think he's talking about here, Olam Atzilos, Gam came os hey achas, which also is like a hey by itself. Shekolel shtei os do, which has those two letters. Now you got a hey kamosher is boyer. Then it says like this: hey dalit havas bekat misa. So he says that when you start about talking about the hay, the way the hay starts, it starts with a dalit. Hine os hay shall rock os dalit. It was originally only a dalit. I mean, it's abras and once find its form bay begavo afikas vav. Va'achakach kasheima and this avra of zir anpin, when Ema becomes impregnated with zir anpin, azai Azai Yotza Ozvav Ramezes Zer Anpin, then you see that there's a vav there that represents that. So he says of it is gala b'soch ima, and it's seen inside of ima. V'nimsa she'ima shehoiza dechida b'tzuras ozdal. Now I have to think of why is ima called the tzuras ozdal. Daled usually refers to Malchus. So he says she'ima shehoiza dechida b'tzuras ozdal, but that's how you make a hay anyway. You start with that. Na'asis ata b'tzuras ozvav oz hay. Hareki the hay is do because in the hay now you have two parsufim. V'harei kanshi ba'os hay achad shall bina nichlavu shtei osias do. V'chein gam shtei osias do shall zer v'nuk the bria na'asim os hay achad. So they go two different directions. One is that the dollar that I don't know what he says that the hay has within it a do, and the do itself makes itself into a hay. That seems to be what he said. The fish and the acid is look for the os yud because they're able to make themselves into a recipient for the shefa that's coming from the os yud. Now this is just really commentating on how the yud and the vav and the dalet can work together to be able to, I guess, build up the shefa and pass it on. The nimsa shebishnei osi is yud k. So let's go to those. Nechlalim kol arba partzufim olabaria. So how does he do that? So how does it work? So let's look at it like this. It says our old combination. He says ki os yud ki chochma, right? He says, and then he says the os hey he bina, and the hey represents bina. V'achar kach mischalekes os hey bepratus l'shnei os yus do, and then you could divide it up into two different letters, which are dalet and vav. Vos Vav Kul Zer V'Nuk. So the Vav represents Zer Anpin, excuse me. Vos Dalad, he Nukva the Zer Anpin, that's his female component. Vod V'Omar Od, and it says furthermore, Shabos Yud, with the spelled out like that, B'Miloi, Yud Vav Dalad, B'Miloi, Gam came, Nichlalim Kol Arba Parts of Him, Olabab Bria. Now, you also see in the letter itself, there's a Lud Yud by itself, you see all the four partsuf in there. He said, Yud is hay, because in the Yud, there's also hay over there. The hind of the Oz Yud, Shel Chachma the Bria, now we're in the Chachma the Bria, Nechlelos Oz hay the Bina, and the Bina the Bria. So also you have the hay referring to the Bina of Bria. So you're in the Chachma Bina, and in the Chachma itself is included a hay the Bria, which because of the construction of Dalet, the Bina of Oz Yud, Yesh Oz Yaz Vav and Dalet, trying to answer the os hey achas shall bina, they make the whole thing become into one letter by itself, which is the hey. So he wants to say that you have the formation of the rest of bria inside of the yud. Now we said that before, and now we're going at a different way. So it says you put the two of them together, they become one in the name Yud K. And we talked about it. So therefore, it's a reference to the concept that you're in Bina. Because Bina is the Os Hey, and that's the Hey that you find that is also a part of the letter Yud. It's Yud and then Vav Daled into a Hey, and then the Hey can be made into a Vav Daled like that. V'chein Os Hey shall Bina, so the Hey that's in the Bina is Chalachet the Shnecha B'Os Yisdu. Which is that Milui. And that's the concept of the Yud, which is a part of the Hay, which we have been talking about. So now you're talking about the Hay incorporated in the Yud. He is So this actually is also that metaphor too. It's a concept of Bria being incorporated. He actually said it the other way, that the seal is being incorporated into Bria. Ki os yud shel chochma, the bria, he begins to seals. So he says actually the yud of chochma bria is actually an element of its seals. The yishin emshechas be yisod the malchus of its seals because it comes out of the yisod of the malchus of its seals. Now, which we said before, it's the yisod of the malchus of its seals. He's comparing that and saying it is developed from, or it is in its essence, the yisod of the malchus of Atzilus. Those hey the bina even because bria. So we know that hey bina go with the word bria. They're parallel. V'harei become shtei osias yak. So now let's look at it like this. He says you have two letters. blue letters are Yud and K. So he said Shechel and Tzilus and Bria. They refer to Tzilus and Bria. Shehem Chochma Ubina Shenichlalem Zeh B'Zeh, that incorporated one with the other. So that's his one. That's at Yud K. Then Olam Atzilus. That's what they look like. But there's another metaphor. He says. The other metaphor is the fact that the hay can develop out in different kinds of directions, I guess. And he says the Yud and the K shall Atzilus Ubria. So that's the concept of Zachar V'Nuk also, is that Bria surrounds Atzilus. And they never separate. Now, when is it they never separate? So that is the nature he says, look, the nature of Bria is the same nature as Ima. So the nature of Ima is that she never separates from Abba. And that connection between her and Abba is constantly happening. So he says, so Hare Yud Ke Vav. So now you have Yaakov. He's over here of Nimsa. Sheyesh Gimel Osias Yaakov Os Yud Shel Chachma Debriya. So there's these three letters that are part of the Yud of the Chachma Debriya. But how does he do that? He said, let's take a look at the Os Yud. Immediately Yesh Gimel Osias Yado. So Yud Dalad Vav. You can go like that. So instead of Yud Vav Dalad, he makes it Yud Dalad Vav. No problem. But Os Dalad Naas is Achakach Os Hey. And then the Dalad, you can put it together with the Vav, you make a Hey. The fish he Nukva Shemiseveris Os Vav Canal. Because what? She's actually Nukvadik. She's female. And as a result of that, she can become impregnated, and she does with the letter Vav. So now you have the Yud and the Vav. Yud, K, and the Vav. The Yud inside of the K. Okay, so our metaphor, and so you see there is a Vav. Bahari Kam Gimel Osius Yud K Vav. Is Chaze Yud Bechezve. V'kol Partsufi Abriya Nirim Mara. So Chezve is a Mara. So he said that all the Partsufim of Bria, they appear as a vision. Shall Os Yud B'Midway. It looks like that. Os Yud the Chochma Kololos Gimel Kutsim. So let's see how he says this. He says because here we are in the Chochma. I thought he's talking about the Chochma of Bria. It has three different points. There's Shahid Keser Chochma Bina, which are their Chaba, are their Kachab. The Hainu Kutsa Elyon Shuhu Keser, so the upper point is Keser. The Hainu Malchus, the Ratzilu Shahid Keser the Bria. So let's take this again one more time. He says the Elyon Shuhu Keser, the Hainu Malchus, the Ratzilus, winds up as the Chochma in Bria. Shehi Kesed the Bria becomes the crown of Bria. Now he previously said it was the Chochma. Now he says it's the Kesed. Maybe same thing. V'gufa Yud who Chochma the Bria. So the body of the Yud itself is going to be the Chochma Bria. Because the Tachton he bina the Chol is the Chochma. So that's the bina that's incorporated with the Chochma. Then you have these letters too. That's the Yud by itself. Avad is Vav and Dal. And now that you have the Kochav, then you can add on to it Zer Anpin and the Nukva. Aim Zer V'Nukva, the Bria. Bahari Nechlalim Kol Kan Kol Partsufi Bria. So we want to come and say that this is where you see that all of the Partsufim of Bria are all contained again, once again, in this Yud, which he's comparing it. I was wondering when he originally said that all of the 10 spheres of Atzilus were incorporated in Chochmah. I was wondering why he didn't say that it was incorporated in Kesser. But I guess a Reish is Chochmah. That's how I figured. So we want to talk about Chochmah. But over here he drops in Kesser. So I'm not sure, but there obviously is a connection. So he said anyway, going on, the Messiah fills up like this, finished up like this. Klala the Yud Ke Vav. So what we said like this, there's different kinds of ways that we can make the Yud Ke Vav work out, that we can show you that that's part of Bria. In other words, that as you look at it, that's what Bria looks like. Partsufi Olam Atzilus, and it's really just an image of that. It's similar to Olam Abriah, but the elders who explained that in those three letters, Yud, K, Vav, and Itzilus, is very simple. I guess Itzilus is simpler. It's just a Yud, and then from the Yud, we find out that you have a K and a Vav there. So it's a stamp. It's a stamp, a seal of a stamp seal. Olam Atzilus. V'kol masha yesh b'Olam Atzilus nechtam dugmasa b'Olam Asif. So it's stamped in Olam Habriah. So Atzilus has an ability to be able to make an impression in a more physical world. The Omer mid apikas yud vav dalit. From the time that those appear. Now, what does that mean? He says those appear. He says at that moment you have male and female. So you see that the yud actually is develops out into these two. Now, let me just for myself, is that he said back before, is that the yud itself could be broken up into a kochel. And then after that, you could have a milui of it, which is about an adalid, which could give you the zachabanok of Bria. The Nishlam Tikkun Akisi the Olam Habriah, and as a result of that, when you have the Yud and the Vav and the Dal and all the players are present, you now have the complete throne of Bria. Azai Nishnama Arba Osius Shem Levi Dot Sila. So these are all stamped, and it makes a place for the letters of Yud Vav get sealed. The Os Hey shall be the Bria the Chlolazim Os Hey the Malchus Dot Sila. So this is showing you how the stamp from up above is coming and make the impression so that the impression looks like what is coming into it. So he says the Malchus the Atzilus, let me read again. The Chlalos Os Hey, the Malchus the Atzilus is incorporated in the Hey of Bina, well, of Bria. And Misachtim Osius Hey Ha'elu, these two Heys go together and make a oneness. Im Shlosh Osius Yaakov the Atzilus, and now that Hey that's in Bria, it has a connection now in the Atzilus. And he's saying that the Yud and the Vav of the Tzilos now are connected to the Hey of Bria. It's Yashvas the Basa. Baz is Yashvas of the Ima the Tzilos, and then what happens is Ima the Tzilos settles in Al Kisei Shalom Bria, because Ima, which is the Hey of the Tzilos, can settle right into that place which is stamped out in Olam Bria. And B'chasia the Ima so now this throne. The throne itself covers over another receptacle for her. She fits into it. Who? Shabina the Bria Shahi so the Kised, which is the throne. Nechlos b'chachma the Bria is incorporated with the chachma the Bria Shahu so Malchus the Chatzilus. So let's go back, and he says the same as the Malchus the Chatzilus. It's interesting. Is in the chachma Bria. In the Chachma of Bria, you have the Vav and the Dalet, and you have all the different parts of him over there. So he says now we know that we have an element of Atzilus that's already there, and now you say you're having a match between the Hays canal. Well, Malchus Atzilus the Chlalos by Ibad Atzilus, it also becomes a part of the Ibad Atzilus, or is a part of the Atzilus that becomes, since it's already a part of Atzilus, that Chachma. So therefore, now it's able to come back into its seals. The chwalos be'ibad the seals. Vaz mechazim akise malchus of its seals. What happens now is covering over the malchus, the throne of its seals, as ima. So we read vaz mechazim akise umalchus the seals as ima. So now they're covering over ima, ima bria. In other words, they're inside of it. I think. So the same way is that their anpin he's representing the part of the yud, which is the stamp in there. It also becomes part of the abba v'tzil. So the chas of abba, and it covers over, becomes a receptacle for abba. You should call part sufi atzil in the chwalim yachad adam echad, because it all becomes one man. He says. Eric Anpin, don't forget that Eric Anpin is really the force of Yichud. So the Zivug Elyon shall call us Atzilus, and then that's the secret of the upper Yichud of Atzilus. Shula Zivug Shlish, the latest Shes. So you have to throw that in to Mavur La'el. So Shes is the concept of bringing unity into all lines, and a lot of stuff here. Okay, thank you for learning with me today.